Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today we're going to be doing a picking the right ship video, and this time we're going to be doing it in regards to pirate ships. Now, when we talk about piracy, the end goal is to take the cargo for yourself. Now, some people may say that cargo hold is not a requirement for piracy, but that's kind of going to be a qualifier here, and let me tell you why. First off, if you don't need a cargo space, then you're probably only in it to kill people, and if that's all you're doing, then you're actually a marauder. You're not a pirate. There's a difference there. The second reason is you're essentially talking about a combat ship to disable the enemy so your team can then come in and steal that cargo. And for that, I would probably just point you back to watch the Picking the Right Combat Ship video. So with that in mind, our starting qualification for a pirate ship is that it needs to have a cargo hold. Now the size of that hold can really vary because there should be valuable small stuff out there if you want to steal and have less cargo space in your ship. So let's start simple and talk about how piracy is completed in the game. Now, while I fully intend to kind of play the lawful side of this coin in Star Citizen, I did do some piracy in Elite Dangerous. Now, this game is going to go much more in depth as far as the piracy gameplay goes, so there's simply just a lot more to it, but I do have some experience in this realm. With piracy, you have a couple of real options to complete your goal, but ultimately the threat of violence is the key. In this scenario, you need to be able to convincingly sell why you were too much of a threat to even think about trying to fight you or to run, and basically get them to hand over their cargo to you. Having yourself a nasty reputation will definitely help with this, but ultimately you're going to need the skill to really back up your claims, or you're going to need a ship with the weaponry and durability to prove that you're ready to fight. So to accomplish this goal, we need ships that have good weaponry or at least a decent cargo carrying capacity. So let's start on the cheaper end of the spectrum as we have in the past, and we'll just kind of work our way up. So with starter ships, the only Mustang variant that you can even really consider using for piracy is the Alpha, as it's the only one that really has any cargo carrying capacity at all. With that being said though, the weaponry on the ship is just so small that I can hardly recommend this to you guys in good faith. So then we jump up to the Aurora lines, and the only one that really brings the firepower necessary to do this effectively is the Aurora LN. The LN does have a surprising combat capability, but the same limitation it has in combat situations is an even bigger fault in piracy, and that's the speed. The Aurora line is just slow, and if your target can run away with their cargo and leave you just in the dust, you're not going to be very effective in your piracy. So unless you have really good aim and an ability to knock out their systems, you're going to have a really hard time using the Aurora as well. If you're starting to notice the direction that this is heading, piracy is not going to be the cheapest profession to get into. Now, you can always earn money in-game doing lawful things and kind of work your way up, but ultimately, using a starter ship as a piracy option is going to leave you frustrated pretty frequently. At least that's what it seems like is going to happen to me. The Reliant is a semi-starter that could potentially be a pirate ship, and it's pretty well-rounded at $50. Its weaponry is still lacking, though, unless you replace that tractor beam up front, with the size 3 weapon. But with a cargo capacity of 30 and what I assume will be above average maneuverability and speed, the Reliant could make a decent little ship, assuming that you pick your target well. Having the second passenger allows you to keep one person flying the ship, and the other person can then end up EVAing out of the ship to go get ejected cargo, or if push comes to shove, you could board their ship and steal it while you're keeping your weapons on target to prevent them from pulling any shenanigans. I don't think it's the best option out there, but in the under $60 range, I think it's probably your best bet. From this point, I think there's two different ships in the $60 to $100 range that could be very proficient in piracy. The first of which is actually purpose-built to be a police interceptor, so in a way it's kind of funny to talk about it becoming a pirate ship, but that's going to be the Avenger. The Avenger comes stocked with the Sucker Punch distortion cannons, and they're designed to throw flux into the power tubes on the ship and really cause temporary shutdowns until it can flush all those out. This was designed to help stop fleeing criminals, but in a piracy role, this does a great job of disabling the enemy ship and allowing you to get that big size 3 Gatling gun on the target and make them too scared to move. The Avenger is pretty durable if you get into a fight, and the speed and maneuverability make it so it's going to be hard for your target to escape. Essentially, you have the ability to then disable the ship, catch them, or destroy your target, all of which are important things to consider when looking at which ship is right in a pirate role. Getting back to the cargo, though, it can currently carry 12 cargo units, but I assume that number is going to climb at least a little bit with the rework and potential removal of the holding cells. The only problem I see with this is that having a one-man craft, you're really going to have, if you get in a situation where you have to leave your ship unmanned to go board the enemy ship, that's a really good way to get your ship destroyed. It's just a sitting duck, so unless they're totally disabled, it's a bad plan. Piracy really is best suited for a few people working together. After the Avenger, though, we're going to look at what is probably the Star Citizen gold standard for piracy, and that's the Cutlass Black. And my biggest gripe with the Black is that it's a relatively slow ship, even for the size, and that means your target, depending on what it is, may be able to run from you. The good news is that, like that on the Avenger, the Cutlass brings 2 sucker punch cannons to the table, so even if they try and run, if you're a good shot, you can probably slow them down or really just stop them altogether. Now, there's a couple of reasons I chose the Black over the Blue, and those are that the Black is cheaper, the Black has low emission engine, so you're more likely to be able to sneak up on your target, and the Blue is supposed to sacrifice cargo space for armor and cells. The Black is a maneuverable ship. It has good cargo capacity, and my favorite factor in this ship, working in its favor, is that it has a 3-man crew. But keep in mind, it really just has 3-man crew, but you have more seats than that. So if you disable a ship, but they're unwilling to cooperate, you can then dock with the ship using the onboard docking collar and board them forcefully. In addition, you also get a tractor beam out of the back of the hatch, meaning that if they just throw their cargo out and run, or if you destroy their ship altogether, you can still suck that content back into your ship without having to leave the comfort of your ship. If it comes down to fighting, the Cutlass is not only maneuverable, really maneuverable, but it does come with a manned turret as well, so you can try and keep continuous fire on your target. It really is, outside of speed, a pretty damn near perfect pirate ship. As we move on up in the price range, we get to a stall when it comes to pricing, and the next recommendation is a limited release ship. That if you're really going to be interested in, keep an eye out for sales, because that's going to be the Freelancer Miss, which was last sold at $165. Now, the Miss is probably an easily forgotten ship when we start talking about piracy, because people mostly look at it as a cargo ship or a militia/combat ship. That hybrid, though, is what I think makes it an outstanding option in the piracy world. You know, the Miss comes with a 3-person crew, so it has the same benefit that we talked about with the Cutlass, and the firepower on this ship is just ridiculous. It's got a missile replenishing system to keep pumping out missiles, and it's got the massive guns on the side of the ship. The big concern with this ship is the unknown, and that is we don't know how fast or maneuverable this is going to end up being, so your targets could theoretically run away from you. That being said, speaking from experience, when most people try and run, they show you their engines, meaning that they're kind of an easy target for you to actually shoot and hit those engines to knock them offline. The big guns on this ship should be able to accomplish that goal effectively, especially considering you have a turret gunner who can do that job for you. So add to that the fact that you can carry a fairly large amount of cargo, and you can really start to jump into larger scale piracy, and I think this is a really, really good ship that you probably need to consider if this is in your price range. Moving to the next level again, I think this one might be a bit unconventional, and that's the Retaliator. Now, the Retaliator is typically considered a bomber, but you can replace the bomb bays with cargo holds or a dropship module. So there's a few different ways and configurations at different costs that you can go about doing this. The first of which is to replace both bays with 2 cargo holds, and the ship then becomes $200. So you have 5 turrets dotted along the ship, meaning that you could potentially overwhelm your target with the sheer number of weapons on the ship. The issue here is that the weaponry is actually pretty small, so if you're taking on a larger target, you may just be annoying them a bit more, with none of the real bite that the Retaliator is meant to bring with the torpedoes not being equipped on board. Ultimately, picking the right target is going to be the key to success if you decide to go with this configuration and use the Retaliator for piracy. Another possible option would be to equip the cargo hold on the larger front torpedo bay, and then keep the rear torpedo bay. Now that takes all the benefit from above and makes you a much scarier issue for another ship to deal with. Now we don't know the amount of damage the clear sky torpedoes will do, and you're only going to be able to keep 2 of them by putting them in the back bay. But if you're not really going to one-shot a ship, you're at least going to have a lot of crazy firepower that can scare your target into complying, or potentially blowing just a massive hole in the side of their ship, which can then get them disabled. You also have a large enough crew to where you could probably get into a situation where EVAing out of your ship to go retrieve what's out there for you is a real possibility. Now that cost comes in at $225. And finally, I think having the Retaliator with the dropship module in the front and the cargo in the rear, and you're probably fairly well equipped for a massive boarding party to engage the enemy. Now I think something like this would be effective against larger targets, though you don't really have a whole lot of weapons left, just like in the first situation. You'd probably be best to kind of drop off your 12 pirate crew members and fly away while they take the ship from the inside. But then, you also have that rear cargo hold to claim what cargo you can bring back to your ship. Now the problem is you're going to need to be able to disable that ship in order to make sure that your folks can make it aboard, or maybe find a way to jam your signal or do something, because if they know that you don't have torpedoes, they may not take you as a credible threat. So I think this is a great option if you're working with a couple other ships that can maybe help facilitate what you're trying to accomplish, and the cost here is going to be $250. Again, I don't think the Retaliator is the best fit, but the ship has enough versatility where I think it's probably worth considering when we're talking about piracy options. Speaking of $250, there's a couple other ships here that are right at this price range that I kind of feel like they could be good pirate ships. One I think is really good, the other is just okay. And the one that I think is just okay is really more of an honorable mention, but unless we see other modules released or further customization, it's probably not the best fit, and that's the Redeemer. The Redeemer is the dedicated gunboat of Star Citizen. With its massive firepower, good defensive abilities, and personal carrying abilities in a dropship formation, it certainly could fit the bill of a pirate ship. My big issue with this ship in a piracy role is what I've been talking about almost constantly, and that's the lack of cargo space. It can only carry 24 cargo units where it stands right now, so if you think about the ship, it can take on just about anything, but that's a lot of work and manpower to collect that little cargo. Now this ship really fits it more in the bill of like a support ship in a pirate operation, and it would excel in that role, but it's just mediocre, just at a standalone piracy role based on that cargo limitation. But at that same price range, we have the Constellation Andromeda, and with 134 cargo capacity, it can carry a lot of loot. And not only does it have the cargo capacity, but with 48 missiles, including 20 size 2s, 2-man turrets, 2 size 4 gimbal weapons, and add to that the cherry on top of the sundae, a snub-nosed fighter to deploy, to further incapacitate and annoy your target, and the Andromeda becomes a fearsome foe to those facing a pirate attack. In addition to the firepower and carrying capacity and the additional fighter it carries, the Andromeda also is supposed to be fairly maneuverable for a ship of her size, and the speed with 4 TR5 engines should be pretty good too. I think the Andromeda could easily be one of the best ships for piracy, especially in the larger category, and is definitely worth a look if you want a versatile ship on the dark side of the law, and this falls within your price range. Now, there's obviously a bunch of ships that I've left off, and the reason I did that was a conscious decision, specifically about those ships and how I feel their role is. Things like the whole series, the Caterpillar. I think those things are, and just general cargo ships, probably fall into more of like a pirate base type of ship, and would be outstanding in a pirate convoy. And for larger scale piracy, it may border on the necessity, but the purpose of this video is really about a standalone pirate ship, helping you to choose one, and I didn't want to cross into that realm. So to sum most of this up, let's say that the cheapest recommendation I feel comfortable giving is the Avenger at $60. Past that, I think the Cutlass is really hard to beat for what you get for the price, and is probably where you should spend your money if you have it, and that comes in at $100. From there, the Freelancer Miss is my under $200 recommendation, with the Andromeda taking my larger scale winning prize. So for the record, I chose the Andromeda over the Phoenix primarily because it's cheaper, and the Phoenix is so limited in its sales that I'm not sure how many other people are actually going to have the opportunity to take advantage of buying one of those, and it doesn't make a good recommendation here. Keep in mind though, if you have a Phoenix, it certainly would be a competitive and a good pirate option. So there you have it, piracy in a nutshell. If you have any questions on this or any other opinions, put them in the comments. I'd love to see what you've got. Otherwise, have yourselves a wonderful day. I'll catch you all later, and take care.